You are listening to the NPZ Law Firm Show. Immigration woes, VISASERVE knows. US and Canadian immigration and nationality lawyers who speak your language.
I'm Vijaya, making sense of immigration law with the lawyers from the NPZ Law Group, only on Mirchi. David Nachman is founder and managing attorney at NPZ Law, and of course, he's always our friend, philosopher, and guide through it all. Namaste, David.
Namaste, Adab, Sat Sri Akal, Vijaya. It's always nice to hear and see you.
Absolutely. I feel the same as well. So, David, another question from our listener, and he's asking that he's not received his social security card, and the employer is telling him that he's not going to be able to work until he receives that card. Now, is that right?
Yeah, so that's a great question and one that we get very frequently, Vijaya. And really what this does, this question highlights very nicely for us the way in which two different laws sort of come together, and that is the labor and employment laws and the immigration laws. And so what ends up happening here is that when immigration, USCIS, approves work authorization for an individual, oftentimes what ends up happening is that they don't necessarily issue a social security card that quickly. But the individual does, let's say, because of either their non-immigrant status or because of their immigrant status, they do have work authorization that's properly granted in the United States. So what ends up happening is the individual who work authorization is granted to shows up at the company and shows the human resource manager, who are usually the individuals who are charged with onboarding a potential employee, their work authorization, and the human resource managers, of course, being trained the way they are and having access to specific portals, oftentimes from a payroll company or from the company that's using some type of a software program. What they'll do is they'll say, let me see your social security card, or let me, which they're not allowed to do, by the way. They're not allowed to ask for a social security card, because if the document that the individual is showing is a List A document, they're not supposed to ask for a social security card unless the company is involved in the E-Verify program. Okay? But if they do, so if the individual asks for a social security card and the individual doesn't have it, it's not that they can't be allowed to be going on to payroll. They must be allowed to go on to payroll, because if the company doesn't allow them to go on to payroll, they're essentially doing something that is illegal for labor and employment laws.
Okay.
So basically what happens is that we oftentimes end up having a phone call either with the HR manager or with the payroll company. And I'm not going to mention the payroll companies. It can be very difficult when it comes to this. But essentially the way it gets done is that they have to establish a dummy number. So the payroll company establishes a dummy number to allow the individual, a dummy social security number, to go on to the payroll. And then when the individual does get their social security number, the HR manager has to go back in and put that number back in. So I guess the most important takeaway here, Vijaya, is that individuals do have work authorization once they have work authorization that's been approved by the USCIS, and they don't necessarily have to have a social security number from the U.S. Social Security Administration, which again is a different administrative agency from the USCIS.
So good to know. So that is there is an option around that. So, work authorization is there, but what they need is to get that through. And thank you for bringing that to our attention, David. Appreciate it. With a reputation for legal excellence and responsive client service, the business and family immigration law firm of the NPZ Law Group represents clients from throughout the US and around the world. Seek their expertise today at visaserve.com or call them at 201-67